Oh man.
We're already like halfway down the runway or the track or whatever, gang.
Yeah.
So welcome to the F1 review here at Kicking the Seat. Earth's Mightiest Critics are here to talk about. Now, let me just preface this by saying, out of the 4 racers here on the track, I know the opinions of 3 of them.
Okay. Well,
David, I don't quite know where you stand on this movie.
Well, he's got the goat head on
this movie.
I sit on this movie. I'm not going to stand for it.
I recommend it. Right? Yeah, like don't stand in those cars where they race. That's too.
It's a little low to the ground, but I got used to it for 2.5 hours.
Okay. Yeah, minivans. I get. I'm applied to.
Okay, I just want to understand. I'm going to throw away the racing metaphors. I think I've used all the ones. Well, I love this movie. All right.
Sure
I sat next to Don, and we were very much sharing that same energy. And Jeff, you saw this movie the week before Don and I, and you were pretty high on it. But David, I don't know if you like this, if you thought it was great, or if you're like, So what's your high level verdict on this one? Just so I can understand how to approach this conversation. If it's gonna be a love fest, pop the champagne, or if I might have to pull over and do some pit work.
Getting a speeding ticket here. All right.
Well, Ian, I don't have any flags, so I'll just give you
2 thumbs. All right.
I watched it with my wife on Sunday afternoon, and we both enjoyed it.
Did you see it in IMAX?
I did not. I saw it in laser or whatever. Yeah, I was at the AMC over here by my place. Has these lounge chairs where you're basically just like almost like totally horizontal.
Well,
which can be a good thing or not, you know.
Date night in the Folly House.
Yeah, with, we like voyeurs.
You like,
yeah,
got it.
Check. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, it was still great sound, huge screen. I did not see it in IMAX, but I heard that Joseph Kosinski totally utilizes the screen very well.
Yes. We'll jump right into it after a brief introduction of who we are. David Fowley of Keeping It Real, you already heard from him. Wait a second. What am I doing? I got to put up the where is it? I'm totally unprepared on my own show.
You're messing with us already.
No, it's just me. I didn't put up our display name.
There I am.
Hey. David Fowley of Keeping It Real.
Yeah.
I'm getting old, so I can't remember who any of you are without my handy little pen.
It's not the years, it's the mileage.
There it is.
In my case, it's both. Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artists, welcome. And Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive, and Every Movie Has a Lesson, and everything else on the internet, it seems. So welcome, gentlemen. I am super excited to talk about this movie. Next week, and this is a teaser for the teaser, because I'm going to mention it again at the end of the show, we're going to be talking about Jurassic World Stillbirth. I'm sorry, a film that I'm done with franchises for this summer, because as far as I'm concerned, Superman, Fantastic Four, Jurassic World, one of which of those 3 I've seen, they're going to have to pull off a miracle, a Book of Revelations outstanding feat in order to touch F1.
You saw one of those?
Jurassic World. I saw that today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
I'm not cool enough for the other one. I'll talk to Jake Hamilton. I'm sure he's seen twice.
Well, no, it's fine. I have no enthusiasm. I'm willing to be blown away by those other 2 films, but it's going to take a lot of work.
You got Super Breath. I bet you will be blown away.
Well,
I was going to say take away, but it's a family show. Yeah.
Well, yes. Thank you for. I am gonna drop one F-bomb coming up soon. It's the one I'm going to allow. And Don, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't remember, it'll come back to you very quickly. But anyway, I'm in love with this film. I can't wait to talk about it. In terms of IMAX, it's very rare that I see a movie that's like made for IMAX, made with IMAX cameras. It's like, you have to go see this in IMAX. Twice this year, I've seen films that have made great use of that. One is Sinners, and the other is this one. Now, if there's another one, that y'all want to recommend, I'm happy to hear it. But especially in the case of F1, I came out of this, yes, to David's point, feeling like I had the full experience that the filmmakers wanted me to have, and not just, hey, look, it's bigger.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll talk about, we'll get into all this, because there's a lot to discuss with this movie. But let's see, Don Shanahan, why don't you give us a little summation of what F1 registration mark the movie is all about.
The movie. It's so cheesy that they use that. The movie is about a has-been borderline never was racer named Sonny Hayes, played by Brad Pitt at 62 years old or something like that. And he is a kind of a mercenary driver for hire. He will go where the paycheck is. He will go where the thrill is. We are introduced to him taking a night shift in the 24 hours of Daytona and acing it, bringing his car up from 7th to 1st. And we realize that's the kind of man that he is. He's a drive by the seat of his surfer van, with complete with surfboard and dirt bike and shower facilities or whatever he's going to do. He's a truck stop guy, but he's darn good at what he does behind the wheel. And people, there's enough people who know him to be like, oh, it's Sonny Hayes, Meanwhile, there is a Formula One racing team that needs a second driver, a little bit of a teammate for a young, impulsive rookie. The team owner of that car is Javier Bardem's character, which fails to register my brain here.
Ruben Cervantes.
Yeah. He needs a veteran driver, and one of his old rivals from Formula One is Sonny Hayes. And he is the ninth person that I believe Javier Bardem goes to kind of get the spot filled. And sure enough, Sonny's crazy enough to be like, I want to slay the dragon that I never got to slay, which was Formula One. It's the top shelf line of racing in the world. There's only 20 teams, and it is top tier. And we learned very quickly that he had a very disastrous wreck that sidetracked his career in Formula One and has kind of turned him into the vagabond that he is since. But you have old school versus new school coming onto this team, and whether or not Sonny Hayes can be a good leader, a good teammate, or just his own man out there on that course. And it's a course that is that jettisons us through the raceways of the Formula One circuit that goes internationally across the world. And director Joseph Kosinski, who does Top Gun Maverick, Oblivion, Tron Legacy, sends us and our cameras on that way. Thank you, Claudio Miranda, for mounting a camera any place possible and making it move. But sure enough, you have, like I said, old school versus new school, and whether or not that's going to be a winning combination for the Formula One team.
Very well done. Nice and succinct. This is one of those movies that had I'll call it a 15-minute pre-credits intro. I don't know if it was actually that long, but it felt, quite substantial, to the point where I thought this was going to be one of those movies where they don't do any of that stuff. They just pop it up at the very end, right before the credits. But no, you get the Daytona saga and Sonny kind of encountering Ruben in the laundromat and the kind of the proposal. And then it comes up F1. And this is the F-bomb. So if you have kids in the room, ask them to leave. But this is my genuine movie critic experience in the theater sitting next to Don. After the lights came up, I said, when that moment happened, I didn't see F1 on the screen. I saw fuck yeah, because this is that kind of movie where the energy is like, it puts out its thesis statement. This is going to be a fun, exciting Jerry Bruckheimer throwback to the 80s and 90s bro movie that also is made for any audience. You don't have to be a dude, but it's got this great macho dude energy, but not in that sense that people might call it toxic. It's just it's a warm, fun, cool movie.
But you can still bottle it and call it eugenics and let Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie sell it to you. It's got that kind of energy for sure. Flags up. Yeah.
You can be my wingman any day.
Right.
But no, this thing is this movie is very exciting, and we mentioned the IMAX thrill of it, but Don, you kind of touched on it with the mounted cameras. The temptation, I would think, is to think, okay, it's a modern car racing action movie. They're going to be doing impossible things. I think this is partially the fault of those Fast and the Furious movies. Half of it's going to be CGI monstrosities and impossible physics. But I didn't see anything that I noticed as being overtly, computer generated. All looked very practical. Now, please, panel, if there's a particular scene like, oh man, this was definitely a CGI or that was impossible. Let me know.
Closest one is Damson Elba's wreck. Where there's like the aerial shot of him tumbling off course and into the woods and lighting on fire. Very CG, but like, you still got to get a car up there enough to be there. And obviously the CGI flames that Brad Pitt's got to pull a man out. Like that was pretty fake, but nothing, like you said, overtly.
But it didn't look fake. It looked very believable. For part of the problem with CGI and effects today is, it depends on how much the studio or the producer wants to spend on those effects. And a lot of times you can see they cut a few corners. Here, the very few effects that you could say like that is clearly going to be real, because you're not going to have Damson Idris actually wrecking his car. But I looked at that with, not only our critics' eyes that we have, but just, the sort of wary eyes of somebody who's seen bad CGI too often. And I thought that looked pretty damn good here. And whatever CGI they used elsewhere, I think was very difficult to tell. I couldn't see green screen or rear screen projection, and those are still used a lot. I couldn't see that in places. In fact, there's a couple wonderful camera rigs where they're showing this major motion and movement, and then the camera pulls back, and hot damn if that isn't Brad Pitt in that car, and it looks like he was all part of that. Now, they might have done that with a cut or some, motion sequencing through CGI, but it puts not only him in the car, it puts you in the car.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Jeff, I think that's an excellent point. It's more of the rational mind thinking they wouldn't put that actor in that situation, but that's the only thing keeping me from fully believing it and wondering how they pulled off the magic trick. The other thing is, I think it was the 2023 season, this movie was part of the Formula One, part of that season. They were fully embedded. Pitt and Idris. I keep wanting to call him Idris. Damson Idris. It's the name. They were embedded along with the rest of the cast and the crew, and they did some of the driving, but they weren't, fully the ones doing all that insane racing. They did have, other professional drivers doing that work, which I think really helps with the authenticity. They had a fictitious racing company and branding everywhere, and they really took us inside what I imagine as a layperson. I'm not into Formula One or racing except in terms of things I see in the movies, but it all looked very believable and high tech and cool. It didn't look like anything in the realm of science fiction. In fact, I came away from that movie thinking I want to get to know Formula One racing more because of the training arenas that they have, where they have the car with that full kind of 360 racing course where they put their racers through hell in these simulations. I'm like, if that's real, that's I'd watch a documentary about that.
That's I think part of that authenticity is you've got 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton, who's the second bankrolling producer in this movie after Bruckheimer, where this is Formula One making a commercial for Formula One, and it shows.
But they also managed to do something else that I think is interesting. We talk a lot about world building here, and a lot of times, most of the time, I would argue that it's in sort of new worlds that are created, whether it's through fantasy or horror, things like that. Here, I mean, kudos to the second unit and just the different amounts of camera and coverage they got on all the stuff that was going on. I mean, clearly shadowing these racers and these races throughout the world was a great enough move, but then to know how to get all of the shots there and so much footage. I mean, the editing is a marvel, not only for it creating such action, but putting all of those pieces together. It feels like we're there. We're at every level. We're right next to these people. And, kudos to Kosinski and his second unit for getting all that extra footage. It creates this world of F1. I'm not a race car guy at all either. And I was so excited to be part of this realistic world. I kept thinking this is just a phenomenal feat, not only for the action sequences, but just being there amongst all this and sensing it, smelling it, feeling the heat, the close-ups of the wheels and everything that goes into the snap, crackle, pop of getting that car ready in seconds and stuff. You just wonder if he was ever in the editing room. Damn, if only I got this shot. I'll bet he was sitting there grinding his teeth going, damn it, I can't use this shot and it's so good. I don't have anywhere, I have no place for it. Those are probably the problems Kosinski had.
Well, it's in terms of that footage, and I kept thinking about this, and David, you might appreciate this. I kept thinking about comic books, because comics are, that's where you can show literally anything, as long as you've got the imagination and the talent to do it. Getting into those weird angles or those tight places, those big, removes. a lot of the time I didn't understand how I was seeing what I was seeing, in this movie, in terms of some of the whip pans they did between the cars, and some of the detail that they get. So yeah, if there's an art of F1, I don't know that people would be thinking along those lines, but I'd love to see a book of the storyboards on this, to see how much of this was thought out versus kind of like what you said, Jeff, or maybe it's a combination of both, like getting all of this great footage and thinking, wow, I never thought of looking at something this way. How can we insert this into this scene to make it more dynamic? The other thing, it's weird because I was constantly taken out of the movie, but in the best possible way, because I kept marveling at how great it is. And one of the thoughts I had was, it may be too early in the year. I know we're in July now, but if this doesn't get nominated for at least all of the technical Oscars, and I'll say it, acting Oscars as well, because there's not a dud in the bunch. This thing could sweep at least the nominations, or it should, if there's any justice in the world. David, sorry, you're going to say I set you up and then I left you hanging.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be very interesting, at least to me, to learn like how much of this was storyboarded, if any, and then how much it's used. They're using like kind of like animation to storyboard it as well. But yeah, the editing, the cinematography, the like Jeff was saying, the second unit stuff is just, really incredible. And I will say this, let's be honest, the screenplay isn't all that. Okay. It's
predictable.
It's very formula. Because this basically is kind of Top Gun Maverick. Okay.
It's Days of Thunder.
And some of the shots are very Bruckheimer, even though his name's on here and everything. But like, we have at least two shots of Brad Pitt walking towards the screen from the distance, like, oh, look, he's over there, he's coming. And it's like, but you know what? I mean, he's at his most. This is the most Robert Redford he's been since River runs through it.
True. That's saying something.
He's got charm still. And yes, like somebody said, this isn't just a guy movie because Brad Pitt. Like I turned to my wife a couple of times and she's just grinning, and I'm like, yeah, that's what he does. He's undeniably got that. I think that he's out Tom Cruise in this movie, because like honestly, like this could have been cast. You could have cast Tom Cruise, sure.
Days of Thunder 2. Yeah.
Kosinski's already done 2 movies with Tom Cruise. If he was available, it probably would have been okay. Yeah, let's do this.
I don't think it would have worked. Honestly.
But
no,
that's what I'm saying. It's a much better movie, and it's a much better movie with Pitt, and he really, captures this character really well. I'm not saying it's a character with a whole lot of nuances or depth, but I don't, with this kind of movie, I don't really need it or expect it. This is a pure Bruckheimer summer blockbuster movie with Kosinski camera work and know-how that he's already established between, Oblivion and Maverick. So, and I mean, they're doing things with, I think they had like, I don't know if it was iPhones in the cockpit, like as cameras situated in different places. I'm like, they're doing things that like I've never seen before. I mean, I know Ian and myself, I really like Gran Turismo from a couple years ago. Great. Even that had great camera work and everything. I am kind of a sucker for a good racer movie. One of my favorites is Speed Racer, but I just think that this is kind of giving us something different, because I really do feel like I don't think we've seen these kinds of behind the scenes before, like hanging out in the pit, not just in the pit, but in the garage, and also hanging out with the designers of the cars.
Well, even the meeting rooms where they're all sitting and talking about the strategy and reviewing the tapes. I mean, it felt very thorough. Like you really that's what I mean too. I think this really dug into that world. I'm just going to push back just a slight bit on that. One thing you said, David, is I think that Brad Pitt brings a lot to the screen that is not necessarily always written in the script. I agree that, there's a lot of character time and very well done characters. I mean, Javier Bardem's character is very specific and very interesting and fascinating. They could have just done more with him, with Sonny. But one thing that I love about Brad Pitt that he's doing that, I don't know, you might have to go back to maybe Paul Newman too, is he's playing his age and he is playing age. Yes. And that is that, Brad Pitt has gotten to this point now where, is he still ridiculously fit and good looking? Hell yeah. Is he tan and golden? Yes. But he is older and he moves slower and he's using that age in how he delivers a line or waits and thinks about it before he responds, or kind of even chuckles to himself like, well, that's what I expect the young guy to say. And, there's something about Newman or people like Sam Elliott who have aged well, and it gives them more depth. And I think as sort of surfacey on some levels as this film is, because it is a summer blockbuster and you can kind of predict the story, that character and I think the other characters around him add nuances to it that maybe aren't necessarily written into the script, but they are there on the screen.
I totally agree. Like the character itself isn't written with a lot of nuances, but what Pitt brings to it is probably more than Cruise would have.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the way we think about action scenes as written in screenplays. When it gets to the point where character turns and sees big explosion in brackets, that's up to the director and the CGI artists and the stunt people to make that big explosion come to life. In this case, it's very broad strokes with Brad Pitt, but I feel like Ehren Kruger, who I cannot believe Ehren Kruger wrote this screenplay.
I know.
It's a long time since I know what you did last summer.
Transformers.
Yeah.
Dumbo.
Yeah. Anyway, but no, we'll get back to the character stuff in a second. Because there's a lot to. Oh, sorry, Don. Did you want to jump in?
Just a fun note about Pitt playing age, and Jeff is spot on. Pitt is north of 60. When Newman made Winning, his big racing movie, he was 41. When McQueen made Le Mans, he was 44. This is 60. Like this is, he's really going after it, and I think that's just that's uncharted territory. And Cruise would play the older guy, but he would refuse to age. Like he would refuse to be as 63 as he is in a movie like this. Yet we're going to get Days of Thunder 2 at some point where I'm like, you're supposed to be in a retirement home. Stop.
Well, I mean, Pitt, I think, and I was talking to my good friend Miguel the other day about this because he had seen it this week and we talked about it kind of privately, and he's in love with it too. But we were talking about the evolution of Brad Pitt as an actor. I think last year for the 30th anniversary of Interview with the Vampire, I revisited that, talked about it, and I was astonished at how terrible Brad Pitt is in that movie. And I think a lot of his earlier performances, he was getting a lot of these kind of physically, beefcake Fabio looking roles and asked to do things that were just out of his range, not necessarily his desire, but it's when he's doing these quirky characters that are more what the popular imagination would say is more like Brad Pitt just playing himself.
Sure.
I'm thinking like Floyd in True Romance,
Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11, Cliff in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's there where he really shines and takes that whole idea of playing yourself to unexpected levels, and I think that's something he delivers here. I was totally thinking about Paul Newman during this entire thing. Redford's another great callback, but I was thinking, everyone's concerned about AI and CGI, and are they going to start resurrecting dead actors to be in new movies? I'm thinking, well, if you ever want to do that with Paul Newman, you don't need to, because you have Brad Pitt just right there. Put him in Cool Hand Luke redo. But I do want to pull over because we have a boatload of comments.
That's good. We're gonna have a pit stop.
Yes, pull over.
Sorry,
gotta change the tires. Heather Green from the character named Brad Pitt is a weatherman moonlighting as a Formula One driver. Sonny Hayes.
Was he in Anchorman too? Brad Pitt?
Was he?
No, I don't think so.
Was he like one of the wacky cameos? I don't know.
Okay.
Let's see. Heather also says, feels like everybody has to acknowledge knowing near nothing about Formula One before making a comment.
Yeah,
hey, I'm always open to acknowledging the fact that I know nothing.
Well, I think that's also a big strength of the movie is like you're watching really specific teamwork. One of you sacrifices, one of you wins strategy, which is completely different than most racing movies we watch, where it's like balls to the wall, go. Yeah, it does. But like most of the time we're watching, we're watching Cars, we're a Pixar movie. We're watching Let's Get from first, last to first, and it's just first place. It's all checkered flag. Whereas this is, we just need to get points. We need to get better with one race to another. All the little what will keep you further in front of the field than me, and it takes me holding back here and breaking a wing to stall for time. Like, we normally never watch failure, intentional failure, which is borderline against the rules, turn into strategy. So it's educational in that kind of way if you don't know a darn thing about it.
Well, and also, and Heather, I am glad you brought this up, because I think it kind of happened organically, where we didn't get together before the show and say, okay, we're going to confess to not knowing anything. It just, we're setting the groundwork, and I am glad that we are doing that, because I have listened and read some other commentary about this movie from people who are into Formula One, who some people like it because it's that bridge of hey, let's really bring this mainstream. And other people, it bugs the crap out of them because this movie apparently does break a lot of Formula One rules. For example, whole play where Sonny Hayes is helping Josh Pierce, his young, not protege exactly, but the kid he's trying to help get ahead in this racing league. Sonny essentially sabotages a bunch of races by hanging back and forcing the track car to come out, so that allows Josh to get ahead. From what I've heard, you could maybe get away with that once, but if you do that a second time, you're going to be fined and possibly kicked out. So the fact they run this gamut a number of times, it's just the same way. When we talk about comic book movies or sci-fi stuff, and that doesn't make any sense. Spider-Man can't do that or whatever. Yeah. So sports movies, again, it is situational, but it's also fair. What's that, Don?
But baseball, football movies, there's always the impossible plays in the wrongest moments of doing those plays that no one in their mind, even a couch potato would be like, "What are you doing running that play right now?" There's some armchair quarterback and all, no matter what.
Right. And it's one of those situations where I wish I could visit the parallel universe where I was a Formula One fanatic to see if I would enjoy the movie, or if the little net details would bother me. But this is a pure entertainment, and I was very happy. Let's see.
Real life doesn't come with scoring and editing either.
That's true.
Wait, what?
You don't hear those
shock, folks, but
triumphant.
Yeah. You can't expect too much realism in some of these places.
Yeah.
Well, I
condensed. The story's condensed. We're not.
No. This live stream is actually only 10 minutes long. At least it will be after I get done editing it. No, because that's real life, editing and scoring and stuff. I wish that were the case, because, man, moments like this when I lose my train of thought completely. Formula One and Eurovision.
Piano.
Sorry. No, Jeff, I just want to pull back over and say, you're right. Life does not come with editing and scoring. But movies do. And I think that's part of the aspirational thing about movies. You get so wrapped up in the great ones that when you come back out into your real life, you're like, why can't my life just be a movie? Formula One and Eurovision are just those things that are beyond popular with Europeans that Americans haven't taken to.
True.
Yeah, I know some people are into racing, but
it's NASCAR.
Hear a lot about
redneck white people.
Yeah,
they really need to combine the two. I think that'd be great.
Singing and driving. Yeah,
NASCAR one.
You can't pit until a good song comes on the radio station. Hold on, I'm waiting for my jam. Yeah.
Days of Thunder Part 2, More Days, More Thunder, which was also a union of Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, would sell a lot of tickets.
You won't see those two in a room together until their children graduate college. Yeah.
Although if they do a new version of that AMC commercial where they replace the clips, just watching her watch Top Gun Maverick.
Talk about unrealistic.
Yeah.
Let's walk into an empty theater to get people to go to the theater by walking into an empty theater you're dressed to go to a premiere in a $10,000 pantsuit.
Right. I want to see Nicole going down the aisle. Excuse me.
Wait a minute. Are we still in COVID here?
So much better.
She's getting their own screening.
A hoodie.
Here's the thing that AMC needs to do about that, just as a quick tangent. They need to get other celebrities, maybe comedians, to do a parody of that and start putting one of those in every month, which parodies that. Melissa McCarthy tripping up the stairs, or
Robinson,
or somebody else. Zach Galifianakis saying, "Excuse me, are you going to chew that loud during the entire movie?" That kind of stuff. Have some fun with it. I didn't come here to feel bad.
No.
Hey, Jeff,
Arctic does not feel good in a place like this because my girlfriend just dumped me. That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Come on, AMC, work with us here.
Right. It's
Same commercial, 3 years now. Same commercial.
Oh, it's a
Jeff,
tiresome.
speaking of aspirational,
Yes.
am I the only one who really wants to? Does anyone know? Is that a real movie theater? Because I think that place looks awesome. Like the hallway she's going down with the giant numbers and everything. Like if that was a set, I'm going to be disappointed because I would
think
love
it's
to
a
go to
Regal
that theater.
theater.
Is it a Regal?
My guess it's
it
might be somewhere in West Hollywood where they have those big fancy kind of theaters, but I don't know. I'm shocked that they've run that for 3 years and not refreshed it. I mean, first rule of advertising, especially in today's time, is after about 4 or 5 impressions, you move on because it's worn out.
Well, you're not going to be surprised by the guy who loves Freddy Got Fingered, but I am a huge. I am a fan of the AMC Nicole Kidman trailer to the point where I actually look forward to when the heels come down in the puddle, that little clip clop splash. I get excited.
Oh man,
I know I got problems. All right. Although the age of Brad Pitt's love interest is not north of 60, let's talk. Let's talk about Carrie Condon
right now.
20 years.
In the movie.
Sorry. Carrie's got to be north of 40 though.
20 years. 42 and 62.
Okay. Well,
that's better than 32.
Yeah.
Or 22. It could have been like a real Margot Robbie and Wolf of Wall Street situation. But I want to ask, because this is part of an overall kind of topic I wanted to get to. We've sort of touched on this. Okay. We'll get back to Carrie Condon in a second because she's kind of wrapped up into this meta question. This movie is a Jerry Bruckheimer production, co-production. And it does feel very 80s, early 90s. If this movie had come out then, would we be as high on it, or would it just be we've seen this movie already and it's it's kind of got too much testosterone and gasoline for one Cineplex to handle because it's up against other movies featuring Tom and Arnold and maybe even Tom Arnold. But
I don't think it would have felt as special. I think it feels like, and I know this sounds like a cliche, but you could almost look at this movie and say they don't make them like that anymore, and they don't. I mean, this is really the kind of, solid, entertaining from first, second to last. I mean, I think that was part of the thing that made Top Gun Maverick do so well with everybody, critics and audiences like is, wow. I mean, not only did they up the ante by making it so real and you're up there with them and Kosinski shooting in these planes with these actors, it was incredible. But that kind of action picture just really doesn't exist anymore. And, and they don't do action pictures really that much anymore, at least not that kind of. Yeah. I mean, it's usually a spy thing or somebody's, getting killed.
It's usually an IP thing.
Yeah, exactly. But this one felt so much like, to your point, Winning on Le Mans and those kind of movies where they used to make hay of that kind of industry and make it exciting. And you had actors who were into that and everything else. I mean, I think you'd have to go back to Rush maybe, or maybe the ones you mentioned before to find something like that. And even Rush was a little bit more of the tragedy of the character situation in there. But this one is so, to your point, when you went F and E, whatever, at the beginning, look at that. And I just did it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Don't have anybody breathing down your neck. But it's just, you look at this, and my thought during most of this movie is, I know it's coming just because we've seen movies before, and it's a little bit easier to predict than most, well, not most movies, but it's easy to predict on many levels. But my God, the amount of just savoir-faire in every frame is just, I mean, it was so well done, so well shot. And I just thought they just can't do this anymore. They wouldn't do it anymore. They would, I mean, and I'll give you a quick example. And I saw this the other day. I don't want to do a tangent here, but it's a Brad Pitt thing. I remember not liking Bullet Train all that much when I saw it because there's so much people and violence being tossed about, and none of it ever seems to land. Like people get shot and they're up and running about, or they're punching. And even at the end when the train is going through the thing and Brad Pitt's flying through the air and a coffee pot hits him on, and then he goes, "Ooh," he might as well be doing Burn After Reading, except that had more realistic violence. and this film to me felt grounded. I mean, it felt like, okay, these characters are really on that track. There is some danger here. There's speed. That female pit crew member who was embarrassed and trying to get over the fact that she failed the team on that one thing. Those things give it weight and I think make it all seem even though Heather Green points out that some of it is not as realistic as it could be, it gives it gravitas. And you don't see that in these kind of movies anymore. Usually action adventure is like whatever it takes to get the people laughing and roaring, whether, we'll have Vin Diesel drive a car right out of a skyscraper. Ay.
Yeah.
This is just like, let's go the opposite.
He's right. 10 or 20 years ago, this is experience, and it wouldn't fit. It would look weird next to it. Yeah.
Well, I think it does. It fits into that time frame, but it also has the modern sensibilities in terms of the technology, and also I think what we've come to expect from characters, because Carrie Condon's character. Sorry for the gross alliteration there, but in this film, she plays. Wait, I'm going to bring it up. I have it.
More alliteration. Kate McKenna.
Kate McKenna. Oh my God. Kate. I keep wanting to call her Carrie, but that's the actress's name. Yes.
Carrie McKenna. Say that 4 times fast.
She is the, I can't remember her title, but she's essentially the kind of the project
manager,
project engineer,
technical director,
technical director,
specializing in wind.
Yeah.
Right.
Talk about Zach Galifianakis.
It's usually Zach Galifianakis or Ronnie Dangerfield.
That's right.
In wind. John Belushi, move over.
Hey, that joke I guarantee will be in the new Naked Gun. But she is, she was a former a NASA engineer, or she was in aerospace, and she was recruited by Ruben to come and join this team. And she was like, oh, this is kind of an interesting idea. Let me go for it. It's kind of an interesting career segue. But she ends up becoming Sonny's kind of love interest. They had that whole cocky, not exactly, I don't like you, you don't like me. They just didn't quite gel, but they eventually kind of wear each other down. And there's a kind of hotel thing in Las Vegas. It's played for a laugh. And there's a whole trope of she comes to the door and Ruben's there and Sonny's hiding in the back. But it is a very sweet relationship. And I think it's that blend of, you've got the kind of the strong female career-driven character that we see a lot of in these types of movies now, but she also is sort of a love interest for the main character, which you don't see a lot of. One of my big complaints is that romance in modern movies is pretty much dead. And so it's nice to see that here, but it's also great to see her being, respected as part of the crew. Everybody who's on that crew gets a moment to shine, a moment to be seen as a pretty well-rounded, human being, and not just these kind of cookie-cutter tropes that you might have seen in a movie 30 years ago that's like this, where it is all about the action and all about the hot shot. The thing I liked about Damson Idris's Josh Pierce character is, from the trailers we see, okay, he's the maverick that has to be, brought down a couple of pegs by the old timer. That's true to an extent, but in his introductory scene, we see him coming off the track and talking to the pit crew, but he's hanging out with them. They're all kind of a family, and there's not this you guys are supposed to be fixing my car. What's wrong with you? The girl who botches the thing with the wrench, she's embarrassed by it and everything, and he doesn't have a tantrum. He just kind of understands that that's she's working on it. It's when Josh meets Sonny that there's that tension, but even that kind of melds because they have to become teammates. But then there's a mid-picture car wreck, which we've alluded to, that takes Josh out of commission for several weeks or months even, and that gives Sonny the chance to accelerate up the ranks of F1, which is great for him. It's better for Ruben, not so great for Josh. And when Josh comes back, he feels like, hey, you're trying to steal my spotlight, and Sonny's like, I'm trying to do a job. I was hired to get this team to the top, and I'm sorry. And then that relationship goes through its ups and downs and more ups and downs. And kind of by the end, yes, it's very expected that they're going to end up being bros. But one of the things I loved about this film is it doesn't give in to the villain cliche. There is a villain in this movie who's introduced. He's introduced early on, but he's not revealed as the villain until pretty much the third act. Like the movie's almost over by the time we figure out, okay, here's the quote unquote plot of the movie that has nothing to do with the emotional journey of these other two characters, which is what we're really here for. But you don't have okay, here's the F1 team that has to be beaten because they're cheaters and they're evil and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
This movie is
picture. Yeah.
What's that?
Kind of a villainless picture other than Tobias Menzies doing his thing.
Right.
But even that is subtle, and it's not mustache twirling. He's looking at a different victory, if you will, that would make a better play for him and the company versus poor Rupert. Is it Rupert Friend playing the villain in
Rebirth?
Jurassic Rebirth? Oh my God!
Yeah, right. You telegraph him a mile away.
One note.
But even then, there's an opportunity for Ruben could have ended up having a turn, desperate for money. He could have ended up being some kind of a villainous character. That doesn't happen. This movie really is about friendships and making each other better and winning as a team. I don't know if it was you, Don, or someone else said it's Cars 3 essentially.
It feels like Cars 3, which is weird. I was sitting
but
back.
Cars
when
3 is a great movie,
it.
so yeah,
it's fine. But you got the second teammate person coming in, old guy, young rookie. There's stuff going on there. I know it's Cars 3 and it's different, but it had that. I don't know. I had that the training, the tires, and the screen, and it had me at Cars 3 for a second. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I want to point out something very funny from Heather. IMDb has it. Carrie Condon was born on January 9th, 1983. So when Carrie Condon was taking her first breath, Brad Pitt was cursing at frat parties.
He said the F word. He did.
Yes, very much so. So
I'll say this though about Carrie Condon is she's a mature actress. She doesn't play characters that are stupid or frivolous. She's not glamorous. They could have filled that with Nicole Kidman kind of glamour queen and stuff like that. So credit for them for giving her a certain maturity and groundedness that with Sonny's somewhat immature behavior on some levels probably brings them closer in age together anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, but Jeff, I mean, kind of to your point, I made the remark about Margot Robbie and Wolf of Wall Street, and that's not to take anything away from what she did in that movie, but they didn't cast the hot 20-something, sex pot du jour. They cast a woman who very much looks like and acts like, and don't take this the wrong way, anybody, a woman. She looks, mature. She's not glammed up. She's very much grounded and focused on her job. There's that one
most of the time in just khakis and a polo shirt. So she
looks like she looks like she's working
like part of the team.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's that one line when we're kind of getting her origin story about like leaving NASA to go work for Ruben. And she says, I can't remember the exact line, but she's like, I wanted to go and take this opportunity and my husband didn't. And that was, it serves two purposes. One, it gives a little bit more depth to her character and how she might be approaching the possibility of a new relationship. But it also does that whole thing that movies and TV show screenplays have to do, which it lets the guy who might be interested know that there could be an opening there.
Yeah, she's not a 42-year-old spinster who's just in the garage all day. Right.
I mean, in credit to Kosinski and the producers of this film, as well as Pitt, I'm sure had a say in a lot of it. I think they fill the roles with really good actors who make even more of the parts, whether they're written pretty well or not. I mean, Javier Bardem is basically, making a lot out of a part that is a little bit underwritten, but just his emotions and his
physicality,
exactly, and his joy and his team, getting excited with the team. It's a great choice of him to do that, and he's good at that, and he's funny doing that, and even more likable. I was waiting for them to turn him into the villain because he's very good at playing villains, and his beard was particularly dark in this, but they didn't. And he's lovable and likable, and even Menzies, when he gets taken down a peg or two, it's not like he's crushed under the speed of his enemies. So good for casting good actors and giving them some room to play and keeping them stalwart. I think those things were very impressive here as well.
I want to give a shout out to an actress in this movie, Sarah Niles, who played the mother of the young kind of upstart. Bernadette Pierce is her character, Joshua's mother. I thought she was fantastic. I talk about doing a lot more than what the role was probably written for. She could do a lot in just one glance.
Yep.
I mean, she was fantastic.
And they edited David to show those glances.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I think is interesting. And I don't know if Pitt talks to this about his director, but you almost could see him saying, like, give me a couple seconds to process this information and don't cut away from that. which I think really helps the character and, again, the sort of age and gravitas of this. And there's a lot of that, because they could have trimmed this baby by half an hour, just say, oh, we got to keep it moving. Nope.
Right.
They take the time, literally their Pitt and Bardem and Condon and Niles stops in the film to let the characters come through. And that's really, I think, helps make it all the more admirable.
Yeah, it's weird because this movie is 2 hours and 35 minutes long. Yeah, including end credits and stuff, so you can shave a few minutes off there. But it does move, and even when it pulls over for those dramatic situations, there is forward momentum. Unlike a certain film that we'll be talking about next week, where F1 I think has ruined the rest of the summer for me, because I'm going to be playing like a side-by-side screen as I watch all of these movies, thinking, did they do this better than F1? And it's not a matter of it being the smartest or most original screenplay. It's a matter of doing the best with what you have and a vision and a voice.
Jeff was saying it without saying the word: execution. Like, these are really simplistic tropes. These are sports movie montages. These are very predictable plot threads, but they're executed so well by
about doing it.
Right. Whereas, I mean, the tropes are the tropes because they work, and there's no shame in using them. It's just different movies execute them much better. Some of them make them as plain as they look, and then some of them give them a little bit of juice. And this is one of those that has that juice.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to, like, especially racing movies, the racing movies cliches, especially when it comes to what's going on the track, it's still very exciting to see cars bump into each other or flip or make a wrong turn. They cause like a big pileup. It's still exciting, even though you could probably, I mentioned this to you, Don. Someone brought up Gran Turismo, which I love that film as well. I saw it a couple of times in the theaters, and we talked about it here on the show. There is a scene where the main character's car flips over off the track and catches on fire. And I'm pretty sure it happens at the exact, maybe not runtime minute, but moment in the story, certainly, as the car flip out in this movie. So I'm like, okay, here's where we start down this familiar path, but it's done so well that it didn't bother me at all. So yeah, cliches are there for a reason. Sometimes they really don't work, but in terms of the sheer visceral excitement and the way it's filmed, as we talked about, at the beginning of the show, really goes a long way to making up for some of the quote unquote predictability. Now, thinking about the movie poster, which is pretty much just Brad Pitt like staring off into some distance, whether off to the left or off to past the camera. There's a whole lot of talk in here that made me think this movie might have gone a real, what I'll call a Paul Newman-esque route, where I would expect that he could die at the end of this at the end of this picture, because they're constantly teasing it, and him like finding that zone where he's going into, and everything else kind of fades away. And there's that scene that's in the trailers where he's talking about, man, if the last thing I do is drive a car, that's the life for me, man. That last race, I fully expected for Josh to be making the trench run, and Brad Pitt is back behind getting eaten up in flames and saying, "Use the force, Josh," or something like that.
This racing movie
that's a happy ending.
This racing movie did something that I hadn't seen before, at least in it's not like I've seen a lot of racing movies, but I've seen a good amount. But the whole idea of Brad Pitt's Sonny deliberately, bumping into cars, or deliberately breaking down, or deliberately crashing to get safety cars on the track to slow everybody down. I'd never seen that before, that tactic. And I thought that was portrayed really well on the screen. By really well, meaning I understood it, and it was easy to follow. And I think, if I have maybe like one minor complaint, I think we talk about the length. Some of those moments, like he did that one or two times, maybe 3 or 4 times, and I feel like a couple of those could have been, maybe snipped out. And I feel like I do appreciate the fact that they do show a lot of Sonny's mistakes in these, failures and mistakes, mishaps, if you will, in these races. But I almost feel like too much time is spent on those. I would have liked to have, man, this sounds weird in a racing movie, but I would have liked to have more like sideline conversations and stuff. And like, one of my favorite moments is going back to Sarah Niles when she's confronting Sonny, you know, and what he has to do internally out of respect for her, because, you know, he knows what he knows.
That's right.
And she doesn't know the truth. And it's a fantastic scene just to see these two actors play off each other. So, you know, that's a minor quibble to like maybe trim some of these, you know, mishaps or, you know, safety car moments. But I did like the whole inclusion of the safety car. I didn't even know that was a tactic you could use.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's the weird team strategy that's possible that I learned. And I was like, wow, that makes a ton of sense that one guy's running interference for another, the draft and pull and all that. Whereas most other racing movies is every man for themselves. And that's normally the play. Right. You have the white hats and the black hats, and like you have the drivers you love and the drivers you hate. And we were saying it's a villainless picture, which is weird. So
yeah, that's
probably the one thing I was expecting was like, when is Lewis Hamilton going to come in here and like, listen here, fucking Brad, you know, like that kind of thing. So
now
where's Sebulba? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh god, that would have been hilarious. That would have been outstanding. Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
I also think to your earlier point, Ian, there are two genres of film that I think are very difficult to pull off because we know the tropes so well and the beats and you know, whether you've read Save the Cat or not, if you've seen 10 of them, you know what's coming. One is the romantic comedy, and I think that's faltering for many, many years now on screen because they don't know how to sort of do new things. So that maybe dramedies like they did with Materialist and even Hello Baby in some respects is, you know, has a little bit of some of those qualities to them, but they're not pure romantic comedies. The other thing I think is the sports movie, and sports movies by their nature have to have sort of the big game, whether it's a race, football, Super Bowl, or whatever it is. But I think when you look back at some of the better sports movies, including some of the racing ones we've all mentioned here, yes, ostensibly they have the win, but the real victory is sort of, dare I say, the teams coming together, especially in this one. I think both Joshua and Sonny and everybody kind of learns to work together as a team here and kind of coalesce during this, and that leads them to victory. But I think that connection that they have with each other and that respect and understanding and, you know, sort of, you know, no man stands alone on the team is a nice part of this, and that isn't necessarily a cliche either. The victory of a thing is always going to be somehow that trope, but it's how you get there that I think is a little more different, you know.
Also, I think, sorry, but it's also where you go after, because we have talked about how there are cliches in this movie, abundant cliches or tropes, whatever you want to call them, but there's also almost like a choose your own adventure with some of these cliches, because within the world of cliches, there are a few ways that you can go past that are also cliches in themselves. So what's interesting is to see where Ehren Kruger decides to split off from the expected. Sonny doesn't die, even though it's kind of set up, and it's even red herringed twice, because you think he might die on the track, but then after he wins, he goes back to his hotel room or his cabana or whatever, and he's like having a panic attack, like, oh my God, is Kate gonna walk in and find his corpse? But the other kind of cliche is, it's set up at the movie that he's kind of the lone wolf. He's traveling, he's going where he's needed, but he finds love in F1, not only of a renewed love of the sport and his friendships, but also with Kate. So, hey, she's going to be the one to pull him in off the road and be part of this new team because everyone wants him. It's the winning formula. But no, he goes the Tom Cody route, and he just says, hey, I'll be out there somewhere, but I just got to go, race and do my own thing. And he's driving to be part of this Baja. Like a Baja race with these giant dune buggies, where the hell these things, monster truck dune buggies.
Pulling up in the van, man.
He's the kind of guy who would like to go to the ends of the earth to race where nobody's ever heard of him, and that's exactly what he did.
Because you're right, the formulaic version of this movie is a big kiss and spraying champagne credits, but they don't. They have, like you said, the Tom Cody moment. It's great.
Yeah, and it leaves it open for a sequel, which I don't think they would do, and I would hope not. I would just give Joseph Kosinski to make something else. Something, because I was looking his filmography up before we started the show, and I was floored to find out he did Tron Legacy, a movie that oh my God, I had the hardest time watching Tron Legacy. I wanted to burn down the theater.
Second act is rough. Second act is rough, but I'm down for all the stuff that makes it pretty. Yeah.
But I love Oblivion, Top Gun Maverick. Kosinski he's one of those named directors now, where it's like I don't care what the movie is or if I've heard of it or if I care, because I didn't know anything about Formula One. Mm-hmm. I saw the trailer for it. I'm like, this looks kind of fun, and then it said Joseph Kosinski. I'm like, don't care. I'm in.
He actually has an opportunity to carve out a nice niche for himself, however you pronounce it, in the world of film. And that is, he could bring energy, character, and kineticism to sports movies. You know, like imagine rather than doing just another retread of this or the sequel, what if you handed him David Boreanaz's novel Pistol about Pete Maravich and said, let's bring the story of Pete Maravich and his dad when together as his coach, they won the NCAA, and get somebody who can make basketball come to life the way this does, with a real actor who knows how to shoot and can imitate Maravich on the court, and the whole energy of that right in there with them. That kind of thing. That's the challenge for him right there. Can you do that in a different sport? And then if you can do that, then he's like, well, what else would you do with other sports that or have never really been properly presented on screen? He could have 20 years if he becomes that guy. It's like Kenneth Branagh had the chance to be like, you could be the guy who brings Shakespeare to the big screen, but he wanted to do Dead Again instead, and play Bond villains in Hercule Poirot. But I mean, he still could always go back to like, do you know how many good Shakespeare movies there? I can count them on one hand. He could have done that as his niche. But this guy, Kosinski, could, I would say, do sports movies, because the fact that you made this stuff feel fresh and new and exciting and real and character driven as well as auto driven, bravo.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get a director nomination at the Oscars. I think that I know, but I think what he achieved here is going to be looked at by directors and go like, do you know how hard it is to shoot action and get second unit right and the CGI blend? Jesus, I mean, it's such a phenomenal achievement.
If they play their cards right, they could keep this in the theater for quite some time.
Yes,
they could. I know it's going to drop an apple. But have it drop an apple around like Buzz fall award season.
Yes,
everybody can have access to it, but the first time you see it would be in
a big screen,
IMAX or something like that.
I mean, to that point, David. I mean, it was the #1 movie last weekend. I think it surprised everybody by getting like 59 mil domestic. This weekend, it's up against Jurassic World, which I mean, honestly, this should have been the big. This movie should have been the big 4th of July release.
Yeah, but it was like it beat Elio for Father's Day. Like it's in the right spot for the dad movie crowd. So.
Right, but what I'm saying is like if this, I hope this movie has some kind of legs, because we do have the big kind of comic book back-to-back, 1-2 punch come up in the next couple of weeks. But I feel like this is like the kind of the safe option for people who want to go to the movies and be awed by some big summer popcorn fare that's a little bit better than summer popcorn fare that we like to think of. Yeah. They don't want to see the whole capes and stretchy man and all that stuff. Yeah, sure. But also, if it does well enough, I mean, they could do like one of those. They re-released Top Gun Maverick during its runs. They could do that in the fall on IMAX, and come see the movie everyone was talking about that you missed in theaters. But
they'll do that in LA, definitely.
Most certainly, yeah.
All right, we're gonna pull over again.
Sure.
Because our tires are getting thin.
I loved Heather here.
I know.
Yeah, she's great. Heather, you were an honorary panelist here. I love this.
Yeah, you're very good.
Isn't there a whole sequence near the end of Interview with the Vampire?
Yes, there is.
Lewis is sitting, staring in awe at the movie theater screen.
That's what he's watching.
It's the way he can experience daytime without having to go outside.
He's watching Superman from '78.
That's right.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh. Oh, here's
you can see the sun for the first time in 200 years. Yeah.
Here's the killer. Here's the tag for that scene. Heartbreak and blood sucking feel good in a place like this.
Earth and Christopher Reeve winking at you. That's about right. That tracks.
And the racing uniforms do look a bit like the sprites outfits in Tron Legacy.
I'm just saying, costume design. Yeah. See, to me, Kosinski's secret weapon is cinematographer. Claudio Miranda did Top Gun Maverick. He did Oblivion. He did Life of Pi. Like, that's the guy. Like, work with him every time. Like, those two get each other, and because they're just the technical acumen between the two is just incredible. You said let him do sports movies. If I know Kosinski tried to grow up and do something non-actiony, like with Spiderhead a couple years back with Hemsworth and all that, and I know he did the firefighter movie Only the Brave or something like that. But like, if he can stay light, you can get Kosinski to be the kinetic George Roy Hill. Like, just give him Hardy Hart, give him the sting, give him something with some movement and some propulsion of screenplay where you can rely on charm and still have something that moves a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah,
but I mean, the fact is, the only thing I was just saying is that I agree with that. I mean, I think he could probably do a number of things. He's very good, but it's so hard to do that other stuff. And there aren't really anybody else who can do that stuff today. Yeah. And like, even, there's a couple of people who have attempted Bond movies and they've done them badly because they don't know how to shoot action. They don't know how to do the through lines. And I was able to follow all of this very easily. And my biggest worry is sitting down for was like, is this going to be so quickly edited that I'm going to have a headache and not understand how this racing world works? And that never became a problem on either front.
I think the only other guy in the same wheelhouse right now is probably Christopher McQuarrie, who's been making those Mission Impossible movies where they're not as rapidly edited as like a Russo brothers movie, where the Russo brothers think they corner the action with the stuff they're doing with Extraction and obviously the Marvel stuff, but those things are the ones we're talking about that are a little too quick and choppy versus the smoothness of what McQuarrie and Kosinski can do.
Yeah, I know.
And then Cameron
of Bond.
I mean, that's the King's up here, and then the next two guys are here. It's still James Cameron. There's no better action storyteller in history than James Cameron.
Yeah, but I mean,
but he's not making movies about real people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say James Cameron isn't even making movies anymore. He's like that whole thing of
he's fallen into that Robert Zemeckis trap of like, let's make everything a cartoon. I mean, literally, that's mostly what they've done in most of the last 20 years of filmmaking is, I mean, Avatar is really well done, but it's a cartoon and it's, I don't know. I don't know why, with a man with his talent like Cameron has, why he wants to just do Avatar now is sad.
Well, speaking of James Bond, which was brought up a couple minutes ago, Denis Villeneuve was recently announced for the next Bond film, and as much as I like Denis Villeneuve, I'm very much like we're gonna watch
a lot of spaceships land and take off for 2 hours, cars parking
with just James Bond piloting them. But thinking about this movie, I mean, if they were to do something fun, like a 1960s era Bond movie, give that to Joseph Kosinski to direct, and gives
practical stunts. You would see more of that than you would with Villeneuve.
I think they gave Villeneuve. Well, first of all, they offered it to Christopher Nolan. He demanded final cut, and they wouldn't give it to him. So then they went to their second choice, which was Villeneuve. But Villeneuve does have a reputation for taking very, very tricky material and pulling it off.
That's true.
I don't think any Bond director has ever gotten final cut.
I don't blame them for not.
Probably not.
Yeah, sorry, but
but this is the first Bond film that's not going to be under the Broccoli regime, right? This is strictly under Amazon. So who knows? What was I'm totally blanking on it. What was the Javier Bardem Bond Daniel Craig movie? Skyfall. Okay, so Christopher Nolan has already made a Bond film. Or I should say there's already a Bond film that was practically made by Christopher Nolan. That movie is just
that's Mendes for you.
Yeah. Anyway,
at some point you're
he did a great job on Casino Royale. No, that was not him. Mendes was Skyfall.
Martin Campbell. Yeah.
Martin Campbell does.
See, he used to have
Casino Royale, which was
there
he was very good. In fact, Casino Royale Casino Royale only looks better every time you watch it.
Yeah. Much like Jurassic Park, whose 7th or 6th sequel we'll be talking about next week. I'd say there's one good movie in that franchise. There's Jurassic Park. And with Daniel Craig, James Bond, I think Casino Royale, and you stop there and you reinvent the franchise 30 years later.
Okay.
But anyhow, we're going to talk about that next week. Not James Bond, but Jurassic World Rebirth.
It'll come up because James Bond's in that movie, right, Jeff?
That's right.
That's right.
We think we
teaser for next week. Teaser for next week. Jeff and I have a bet.
You have a theory? Okay.
We have a great theory.
Don't forget it because now I'm intrigued.
In fact, I'm the host. Ian, is there any chance we could just talk about James Bond next week?
Sign me up.
Jeff, there is a chance that we could talk about James Bond next week, but not for that show because we are going to be talking about Jurassic World. Okay. But yeah, stay tuned. Heather is bringing us home here. I think a major point against a period jet set 007 is lack of product placement opportunities.
That's fair. Yeah.
Cheapness feels good in a place like this.
No, it's funny because I read that too fast. I immediately thought jetpack. I saw jet set and lack. Anyway, and I thought about Thunderbolt.
Jetpack from Thunderbolt. Yeah.
Right.
Sexiest
trying to think what's the sexiest scene in a Denis Villeneuve movie?
I have a terrible answer for this, but I'm not.
What?
I have the right answer.
Del Toro blows away the family in the end of the movie.
That's the.
I'm just.
I was
terrible.
Anna de Armas as the big billboard pointing her blue finger at Ryan Gosling in Blade Runner 2049.
It's true.
Walking towards him, blue, and then saying, "Hey, are you lonely?"
Yeah,
and that's when he realizes, "Oh, shit, this woman is a robot. I've been living with a robot."
And Jeff, thank you very much for reminding me of the only worthwhile 30 seconds in Blade Runner 2049.
I'll back you there. Boring movie.
Hey,
David, I did that just to get that reaction.
Let's. I can see some of your point there. I think what Denis Villeneuve did with, particularly Prisoners, was quite substantive.
Now we're talking.
Best movie, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I hated Prisoners.
Oh,
no surprise.
But I was gonna say, right?
It's Jackson's best performance.
There's a KTS in the corner over there.
Maybe. I'd still give him as Wolverine in one of those X movies. No, I think Prisoners was more. I don't know. I dare say I'd have to go back and watch it again, but I vowed never to watch that movie again. It's a whole thing. I did an episode on it back in the heady days of the audio-only podcasts. So if people want to go and listen to me ranting about it with two other people who haven't been on the show in a decade, love you, Matt and Graham, do that. Anyway, I'm going to let us get out of here because
let's leave on the high note. We all love this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week, James Bond.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wait, hold on. Did I okay. Did you watch Denis Villeneuve's Incendies? No.
I did not.
Jeff, you saw it?
I've seen all of his films.
Verdict?
Good. I think he's a real talent. And I like Blade Runner 2049 better than you. I don't think that was as much of a success as many of his others. Enemy is another small film that he did with Jake Gyllenhaal, which is very good. And a very unappreciated female talent in that who has yet to sort of break through.
Sarah
Gedson.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am going to wrap it here. I'm cutting off the comments. Why did I do the timeout?
Thank you, Heather.
Yes, thank you, Heather, very much for hanging out. Yes, checkered flag going down. But no, thanks everyone for hanging out and talking about F1. Folks, if you're watching this live or on the replay and you have not watched F1, oh my gosh, I just realized we didn't put the spoiler banner for this entire show. But I dare say, even if you know everything that happens in this movie, it's not going to take away from the experience of watching the film. And this is my highest possible recommendation. If you're going to see it in a theater. And if you're going to see it in a theater, see it in IMAX theater or whatever premium format size. There's also, I think, because Miguel saw it in this format, there are some theaters that have the butt rumbling chairs and the large premiums. Not necessarily 40X, but the kind of the Dolby Atmos chairs with the giant screen. Right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine seeing this in 40X. I think you'd walk out with like a broken back and a lawsuit. But,
they did not have the rumble seats working when we saw it at the AMC River East because probably that very reason. Like, this is going to hurt people's bodies.
Yeah. We saw it at Regal, and that's straight IMAX though. So yeah. We weren't going to get the seats, but we got the sound. So.
Yes. But anyhow, thank you everybody for hanging out and talking about this wonderful film. I am, as always, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Jeff York of The Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artist, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, and Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and everything else. Please, again, join us back next week, 8 p.m. Central on Wednesday for Jurassic World Rebirth. It might be the shortest or the longest live stream we've ever done. I haven't decided what direction we're going to go in. Okay. And if you like this show, please like, subscribe, and support all of Earth's Mightiest Critics, whose information is down below. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.